Greetings and blessings, and welcome to God Speaks. I'm your host and teacher, Marquita Brooks, and we are looking at a very important yet also very controversial topic today, the overruling of Roe and the future of America. This is something that's certainly been on my heart since Friday, when the United States Supreme Court made the decision in the Thomas E. Hobbs State Health Officer of the Mississippi Department of Health versus Jackson Women's Health Organization decision. When they made that decision, it of course overruled the decision that had come forth previously in 1973 in the Roe versus Wade United States Supreme Court case. Now, this is very important to every American. It's something that's important to believers. It's something that's important to unbelievers. It's something that's important to women. It's something that's important to men. It's something that's important to God. And this is why we're looking at it today. And of course, the Lord gave me a few days. He's been talking to me about this for quite some time, actually, certainly not just with the court ruling on Friday, but on today, he's released me to actually share concerning it. And there's a lot that we need to look at. There's a lot that we need to discuss to really understand God's heart, to understand what has happened in the political arena, what's going to happen, and to really get an understanding of individual hearts, because most people have strong emotions concerning the issue of abortion and abortion rights and rights to life in the United States. And these are important things. It's important to all of us. And so we've absolutely got to look at it as God speaks to our hearts so that we can go forth as his people and as a nation. And so we've got to absolutely look at this topic, the overruling of Roe and the future of America. So we're going to look at it from those three specific points that I shared with you. We're going to look at it from a political perspective. I've got to actually share some things with you politically, because a lot of people don't really understand what happened. They've heard a lot of political rhetoric. They've heard a lot of people talking, a lot of people upset, a lot of people angry, but they don't have a real understanding of what has occurred. And then we've got to look at it spiritually, meaning we've got to hear what God has already said concerning this, because the Lord has not been silent on this issue. He's spoken a lot. And I don't just mean historically, he's spoken in recent years a lot about this issue, particularly to this ministry. And so I'm going to share some of that and remind us of things that God has already shared with us concerning this. And then we're going to really look at it from a very personal perspective, because the reason this is so emotional for so many people is because it is actually very personal. It's absolutely very personal. We're looking at a federal decision, but that affects people on very intimate and personal levels. And so this is why we've got to look at it from all three points of view. And we're starting with the political, not that the political is most important, because clearly what God says is most important. The topic of this Bible study is God Speaks, the overruling of Roe and the future of America. But before you can really understand what God is saying and really be able to grasp it, you need to grasp what has occurred in the political realm and what is occurring in the political realm. It's going to be so important that you get that in order to really get what the Lord has been saying to us and apply it now to where we are in the history of this nation. And so I want to start first with the actual syllabus of the court and the opinion of the court that came out on Friday. Of course, Justice Alito wrote the opinion of the court, and it was preceded by the syllabus of the court, in which case you can actually read what the court decided on the Thomas E. Hobbs State Health Officer of the Mississippi Department of Health petitioners versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. And so that was, of course, the court case that was at hand. It wasn't Roe versus Wade. It was a court case that was similar, that had the potential to either confirm what had been ruled in the Roe versus Wade case or to overrule it. And of course, the court voted to overrule it. And all that is required in the Supreme Court for a ruling is a simple majority, in which case the majority of the justices agreed to overrule what was decided in Roe versus Wade. And it was cited in and explained in the syllabus of the court, which is kind of an explanation of what has occurred, and then in the opinion of the court, which was written by Justice Alito. And so there's some excerpts that I got to share with you, and I got to explain them to you because I need you to get to understand some things. I do have somewhat of a legal background, having worked for a law firm and at the law library and being a part of pre-law, everything, taking constitutional law classes. Like there was a time when I was on a legal track and actually worked in a legal field. And then Lord called me to ministry before I continued down that road. So this is actually a passion for me. As a little girl, I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. And so this is an area that I love, that I actually spend time understanding, and legalese is something that makes sense to me. And so I want to try to help it make sense for you so that then you understand where we are, and then you'll even understand better what the Lord is saying. And so we've got to get there because there've been lots and lots of arguments and lots of people speaking out of emotion, but we need to know what actually happened in the legal realm and what's happening in the political realm so then we can really understand what the Lord is saying about the spiritual realm. And so I want to first start with the syllabus of the court, which I shared with you. It precedes the opinion of the court because it kind of gives you some information that you need to know. There's some things you need to understand. And so this first paragraph that actually explains to you, the petitioners in the case and how this case even got to the Supreme Court. I want to read that paragraph to you exactly as it is written. So that you can understand the key players in this case. Like I said, it wasn't Roe versus Wade. Those aren't the key players. It's Dobbs and the Jackson Women's Health Organization. Those are the key players. Okay, so Thomas Dobbs, just to give you a little background, actually is an officer of the Mississippi Department of Health. So basically, it's like the state of Mississippi against the Jackson Women's Health Organization. That's pretty much how it is. And Dobbs is a representative, a state health officer of the Mississippi Department of Health. So representing the state of Mississippi and what Mississippi had decided, the laws that were in Mississippi at the time. And this is what has been appealed until it came to the Supreme Court. And this is where we were. So let's listen to this. And I know, it's, like I said, it's some legal information, but I want to make sure you get this. And then we're going to look at the opinion of the court. So it says Mississippi's Gestational Age Act, so that's our law, that's in Mississippi, provides that, this is a quote, except in a medical emergency or in the case of a severe fetal abnormality, a person shall not intentionally or knowingly perform or induce an abortion of an unborn human being if the probable gestational age of the unborn human being has been determined to be greater than 15 weeks. And that's Mississippi Code 4141-191. And what that's stating, so pausing there, is that Mississippi has a law. So you get that. The state of Mississippi has a law. And that law was that people should not be able to have abortions in Mississippi, or actually cannot, according to Mississippi state law, cannot have abortions at a time greater than 15 weeks gestation, meaning if a fetus has been in the womb and growing for more than 15 weeks, Mississippi has a law stating that it is illegal to perform an abortion after that time. That's the beginning of this. That's the beginning of the case, that Mississippi has this law. Okay, so now let's keep reading. Respondents, Jackson Women's Health Organization and Abortion Clinic, and one of its doctors challenged the act, Mississippi's law, in federal district court, alleging that it violated the court's precedents establishing a constitutional right to abortion, in particular, Roe versus Wade, 410 U.S. 113, that's going to be that particular case, and Planned Parenthood of Southeast Pennsylvania versus Casey, 505 U.S. 833. Again, that's another case that came before the Supreme Court. And Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey were similar rulings, again, that there was a constitutional right for a person to have an abortion. This happened in the past. Continuing to read from the syllabus of the court. The district court granted summary judgment in favor of respondents and permanently enjoined enforcement of the act, reasoning that Mississippi's 15-week restriction on abortion violates the court's cases forbidding states to ban abortion pre-viability. Now, viability is when a person, a woman who's pregnant, can feel movement within her womb of the baby. Now, that can actually happen between 16 weeks and 20 weeks for pregnant women. So she can start to feel movement at 16 weeks or even earlier, or as late as 20 weeks or even later. But that term viability is one that's used a lot when people are talking about abortion, because some people are saying, at that time when she can actually feel the movement in her womb, now we consider it that we should not have abortions at that point. Other people say you can have abortions past that point, but that's what viability means. It's speaking of the movement in the womb that generally happens between 16 and 20 weeks gestation, 16 to 20 weeks that the fetus has been in the womb. So to read that statement again, now, as you know what viability means, it says the district court, that's going to be a district court in the area of Mississippi, granted summary judgment in favor of respondents, in favor of the abortion clinic, and permanently enjoined enforcement on the act, the Mississippi Act, reasoning that Mississippi's 15-week restriction on abortion violates the courts, as in Supreme Courts, because it's in the capital C, cases forbidding states to ban abortion pre-viability. The Fifth Circuit affirmed, so it went up even more, and it was affirmed again. Before this court, the Supreme Court, petitioners defend the act on the grounds that Roe and Casey were wrongly decided and the act is constitutional because it satisfies a rational basis review. Now, what that means, Mississippi, again, had a law that after 15 weeks gestation, people could not have abortions. There was an abortion clinic in Mississippi, Jackson Women's Health Organization, that fought against that law. They said, hey, this violates Roe v. Wade, which is a Supreme Court case. And Supreme Court cases are decided based off of the Constitution, because the Constitution is going to be the most important and foundational law creating document on the federal level, meaning across all 50 states. The Constitution is going to be the most important legal document. Now, in addition to the Constitution, there are other federal laws that are looked at by the Supreme Court, and of course, precedents, which means previous Supreme Court cases. Now, it doesn't mean that the Supreme Court has to find like a previous Supreme Court case, but they're much more likely to do so. There's actual, legal language for actually being consistent with previous Supreme Court cases. But in this case, of course, we know the Supreme Court chose not to do so. And the opinion of Justice Alito, the opinion that he wrote, actually addresses the fact that they chose not to be consistent with previous cases, Roe versus Wade, and also Planned Parenthood versus Casey. They chose to be inconsistent with those two rulings and overrule them, making a different decision in Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health. Now, what you also need to understand is that when this was brought to the Supreme Court, the Women's Health Organization in Jackson, Mississippi, was pretty much coming against the state of Mississippi, saying, hey, you guys shouldn't have a law that restricts abortion to only 15 weeks because of the Supreme Court case of Roe versus Wade, and of course the case of Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Because of those two Supreme Court cases, which are federal, that means over the whole nation, the state of Mississippi should not have a law that says this, prohibiting that particular abortion clinic, Jackson's Women's Health Organization, from performing abortions after 15 weeks gestation. They were saying, no, we should be able to perform abortions longer than that, up to the time of viability, actually feeling, the movement of a fetus in the womb. We should be able to perform abortions up to that point, which could be up to 20 weeks, for some people even longer, because they may not actually have viability until later than 20 weeks. And so this is how it came to the Supreme Court. Mississippi had a law. An abortion clinic was fighting Mississippi's law, saying Mississippi shouldn't have that law. This is how it got here. Now, the Supreme Court was making a decision based off of what was brought to them. Okay, so now continuing in the syllabus, I want you to hear some certain language, and then we're going to go to a little bit from the opinion, and then we're going to talk about it so that you understand what the Supreme Court actually decided. So here we go. Held, the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. What does that mean? That one sentence sums up the entire findings in Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health. Like that this case that overturned Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey was summarized in that one sentence. And that the Supreme Court justice, the majority of the Supreme Court justices found that the Constitution of the United States does not, in fact, give to individual citizens of the United States the right to have an abortion, that right is not found in the Constitution. Now, in Roe versus Wade and in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, there were two different rights that were actually cited, rights that are inherent in the Constitution that were used as basis for stating that individuals do have a right to an abortion. What the Supreme Court at this time on Friday was stating was that the previous courts that were the Supreme Court justices that were seated at the time of Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, they stretched what was in the Constitution and applied it very loosely to a very specific situation. And so this is what the Supreme Court recently found. So they basically believed that what the Supreme Courts did in the past with Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey was wrong, that they were in error when they made those decisions, which is why they overruled them. So then if you continue on, the Supreme Court actually shares why they believe those previous decisions were in error and why they do not believe that the federal Constitution, because remember the Constitution is for the whole nation, that the Constitution does not give a right to have an abortion. And so it continues on. I'm still reading from the syllabus. It says, finally, the court considers whether a right to obtain an abortion is a part of a broader entrenched right that is supported by other precedents. The court concludes that the right to obtain an abortion cannot be justified as a component of such a right, meaning these other rights. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Attempts to justify abortion through appeals to a broader right, a right to autonomy. See, that was one of the rights that's in the Constitution. There is a right to autonomy, which means to be an individual person making choices for themselves. And to define one's concept of existence, because there's, again, a right to existence in the Constitution. You know, life, liberty, truth, happiness, life is existing. There is a right to existence. They said that defining this concept proves too much, meaning it's not a responsibility of the state to define that. Okay. Now it says, Casey 505 US at 851, this is quoting Casey, that case, those criteria at a high level of generality could license fundamental rights to illicit drug use, prostitution, and the like. What sharply distinguishes the abortion right from the rights recognized in the cases on which Roe and Casey rely is something that both decisions acknowledged. Abortion is different because it destroys what Roe termed potential life and what the law challenge in this case calls an unborn human being. We'll talk about that in a minute. None of the other decisions cited by Roe and Casey involve the critical moral question posed by abortion. Accordingly, those cases do not support the right to obtain an abortion, and the court's conclusion that the Constitution does not confer such a right does not undermine them in any way, the other cases. So now let's look at this. Let's look at what was just stated in the syllabus of the court. This is preceding the opinion of the court, so we understand what's going on. What they're saying is that in the two previous cases, Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that the courts found in the Constitution a right to autonomy, meaning you can be an independent person making your own decisions. That's in the Constitution. They said, however, it was loosely applied to abortion. And the reason they said it was loosely applied, it was generally applied to abortion, and that they think that that is not the responsibility of the court to do that is because if you loosely apply this right to autonomy, in abortion cases, you can apply to anything else. And what they cited was like, you could say that people have the right to illicit drug use. So like cocaine use and, other things that we've deemed illegal federally. Well, if this right to autonomy is loosely applied, people have right to do anything, actually, including prostitution, which we have federally deemed to be illegal, like all of that. So what they're saying is then that would mean that pretty much people can do anything they want to do. Now, here's the challenge, though, because they think abortion goes even further than illicit drug use or prostitution. The illicit drug use is going to be just about yourself. Prostitution is going to involve one other consenting person. Abortion, on the other hand, involves a potential life, which is what it was called in the Roe versus Wade case, which is what's cited here. And it was called an unborn human being in the Mississippi law. And that was the law that was brought before them that they were making a decision on. In the Mississippi law, fetuses are called unborn human beings. In the Roe versus Wade court ruling, fetuses were called potential life. And so what these court justices, the majority of these court justices, are saying is that abortion as a decision is different than even the illicit drug use decision or prostitution decision, because you're dealing with potential life or an unborn human being who now is not being asked what they choose. And of course, actually, Justice Alito actually said this in one of his interviews when being confirmed as a justice, is that fetuses always want to live. If a fetus could speak, a fetus would tell you they want to live. And so what he so, because he of course wrote the opinion and drafted the syllabus as well. The point is that abortion involves more than just the one woman. It also involves addresses another human being, unborn human being, or potential life, depending on how we want to look at it. In Roe, it's called potential life. And in Mississippi's law, the fetuses were called unborn human beings. Either way, it brings to us another question. And this is exactly what is cited next. This is what's cited next in the syllabus. It says, abortion presents a profound moral question. The Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Roe and Casey arrogated that authority. The court overrules those decisions and returns the authority to the people and their elected representatives. Now, this again is the end of the syllabus. How it started, that's how it ended. And the opinion does the same thing. It starts kind of in the same way and ends in the same way. Now, what they're citing here, what you've got to understand about the Constitution. So remember what I said, Constitution is key when you're looking at the Supreme Court. In the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which was passed on September 25th, 1789. So again, it was passed in Congress on September 25th, 1789, and ratified December 15th, 1791. This is what the 10th Amendment states. The powers not delegated to the United States, and that's going to mean the federal government. So executive, legislative, or judicial, any of the three branches of the federal government, powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. Meaning that if the Constitution doesn't say that there's a specific power given to the federal government, then it's inherently automatically given to the states and given to the individuals who live in the states, the citizens in the states. So what the justices are saying in this particular case, when we look at Dobbs versus the Women's Health Organization, Jackson Women's Health Organization, is that the right to decide whether or not abortion should be legal or when it should be legal. Like, should it be legal before 15 weeks? Should it be legal before 20 weeks? Should it be legal before 28 weeks? Like, all those decisions should be left to the states, because the Constitution does not actually give the federal government power to make that decision. That's what the Supreme Court justices found, that the Constitution doesn't give the federal government the right to make this decision. And they believe that when the Supreme Court made those decisions in Roe versus Ferguson, Roe v. Wade, and I'm thinking about another case, and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, when the Supreme Court made those two decisions, they were actually overstepping their bounds. What they did was they took rights away from the state, and then became usurped those rights themselves, saying that the federal government had a right to make that decision. Now, this is actually important. I know some of you are like, whatever, this is not even important. We're talking about a women's right. We're talking about a fetus's right. But when we're looking at the United States of America, remember today's topic. Remember what today's topic is. The overruling of Roe and the future of America. Everything is important considering where this nation is going. This case that was brought to the Supreme Court, Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, was a state law, was brought to the Supreme Court. And an abortion clinic wanted the Supreme Court to overrule the state law. And the Supreme Court basically said the Supreme Court doesn't have the right to do that. That's basically what happened. And the reason it's controversial to us is because Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey already existed. If those cases had not come before the Supreme Court prior to this, it wouldn't be such a mind blower. What's blowing people's minds is that this Supreme Court overruled rulings of two previous Supreme Courts. That's what's blowing people's mind, because that rarely happens. That rarely happens. Usually the Supreme Court is consistent, and Justice Alito actually addresses that. But usually the Supreme Court, if there's been a previous decision, usually a future Supreme Court will stand with previous court decisions. But this Supreme Court is saying the other courts were wrong. They took rights away from the state and from individual citizens who vote for their state representatives. And they said this is a federal decision to be made. But the Constitution doesn't expressly say that the federal government is supposed to make this decision. Now, there are two rights that you're actually going to hear in the opinion that both Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey actually connected abortion to in the Constitution. And we already heard about one of them, which is autonomy. The Constitution gives us autonomy. It gives us all as citizens the right to autonomy, meaning I am an independent individual as long as I'm an adult, an 18-year-old consenting adult. I'm an independent individual and I can make my own choices, and the government can't take my own autonomous choices away. Now, of course, that means so far as my autonomous choices don't endanger or affect somebody else's autonomous choices. So this is where we get a challenge. And this is why abortion becomes challenging, because even the definition of the fetus, whether it is potential life, meaning not yet a person, or an unborn human being, meaning it is a person, is debatable. See, this is where the challenge comes in. Does the woman have autonomy, that right to autonomy? You believe so, yes, if you think that the fetus is not a human being. If you think the fetus is just potential life, but not yet life. But if you think the fetus is an unborn human being, meaning they're human, they're just not born yet, then they also have a right to life, to existence. And the challenge is the woman's right to autonomy then is going to conflict with the right of the unborn human being's existence. This is what Justice Alito and Alito and the other justices who voted, of course, in this ruling believe. And they believed, hey, this is so debated. We so disagree on this that the federal government should not have ever made a decision on it. It should have been left to the states and the people electing the officials in their states, because you're going to elect officials that agree with you. And in your vote to elect your officials who are going to affect your laws and who are going to write your laws, they're going to interpret your laws in your state, and they're going to enforce your laws in your state. Your right to vote for them and even to get them out of office, like not vote for them in the future, that right you have to do that is your way of making that decision for yourself in a state level as opposed to in a federal level. This is what the justices were finding. And this is an important precedent now, because now a new precedent has set, and some people are happy about that precedent. Other people are concerned about that precedent. But there are some things that I want to remind you of as we go forward. And this is, again, just speaking from the political realm. Like I said, this is kind of my area. I've always been somewhat of a history buff. And I've always, the foundation of this nation and how God established it and what our founding fathers understood, and founding mothers as well, because some very important women who were at work at the founding of this nation. Those things, the things that they believed are very important to me, because as a nation we're building, we're supposed to be remembering that vision. So you got to write that vision and make it plain. They did. In the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution, they made the vision very, very clear for us to understand and for us to follow. In many ways, we've diverted from that vision, and that concerns me. And this is exactly how the justices were ruling, in that they were stating that, when this nation was founded, the whole point was to give the federal government certain powers. But once those powers reach their limit, like this is all the federal government can do, the rest of the powers lie with the state. And that's true. That's actually true in the Constitution. I just read it to you in the 10th Amendment. That's actually how the Constitution was set up. And not even just in the 10th Amendment, it's actually kind of the heart and the language of the Constitution itself, that the founders never wanted the federal government to get too powerful. because the fear was that it would become more like a monarchy or a dictatorship. The goal was that the states would always have some level of authority, some level of autonomy. And then the federal government made decisions that would be important for us to, protect ourselves, our interests as a nation internationally, and to have some consistency, those type of things. But other decisions were to be left to the states. That was always the heart of the founding fathers. Like I said, this wouldn't even be so controversial if Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey hadn't already occurred. The fact that those have been overturned after 49 years since Roe versus Wade, it's unprecedented that has occurred. And this is why people are freaking out, not understanding that this ruling was a ruling to give the power of deciding about abortion back to the states. It did not make abortion illegal. That's not what this ruling did. It did not make abortion illegal. It said the federal government has not the right to decide this. The states need to decide. And when Justice Alito actually speaks in the opinion, he shares why to him, and of course the other justices wrote concurring opinions which agree in similar fashion, but you can read all this online. It's all public. It's all public information. I'm reading it from online. In his opinion, the point was that because it's so controversial, it needs to go back to the states. Because we don't agree on even whether a fetus is a human or not a human. We don't agree on that. We don't agree when abortion should happen. We don't agree on that. Because it is so debatable and includes moral and personal questions and issues, it instead should be decided by the states, which in the state law is going to be a reflection of the people's votes. So it goes back to the hands of the people. And this is why his language says that very thing. And so I want to read 3 paragraphs from his opinion, and then we're going to talk about the political landscape, and then we're going to go into the spiritual. This is from the opinion of Justice Alito, the opinion of the court. Abortion presents a profound moral issue on which Americans hold sharply conflicting views. Some believe fervently that a human person comes into being at conception and that abortion ends an innocent life. Others feel just as strongly that any regulation of abortion invades a woman's right to control her own body and prevents women from achieving full equality. Still others, in a third group, think that abortion should be allowed under some but not all circumstances. And those within this group hold a variety of views about the particular restrictions that should be imposed. For the first 185 years of the adoption of the Constitution, each state was permitted to address this issue in accordance with the views of its citizens. Then, in 1973, this court decided Roe versus Wade, 410 U.S. 113. Even though the Constitution makes no mention of abortion, the court held that it confers a broad right to obtain one. It did not claim that American law or the common law had ever recognized such a right. And its survey of history ranged from the constitutionally irrelevant discussions of abortion in antiquity to the plainly incorrect, its assertion that abortion was probably never a crime under the common law. After cataloging a wealth of other information having no bearing on the meaning of the Constitution, the opinion concluded that a numbered set of rules, much like those that might be found in a statute enacted by a legislator. And then another paragraph. These are throughout the opinion. See, these are not consecutive paragraphs. So I'm going to another paragraph now. At the time of Roe, 30 states still prohibited abortion at all stages, which means 30 states made abortion illegal when Roe versus Wade became a ruling. In the years prior to that decision, about a third of the states had liberalized their laws, but Roe abruptly ended that political process. It imposed the same highly restrictive regime on the entire nation, and it effectively struck down the abortion laws of every single state. As Justice Byron White put aptly in his dissent, the decision represented the exercise of raw judicial power, 410 U.S. at 222. And it sparked a national controversy that has embittered our political culture for half a century. We end this opinion where we begin. Oh, this is another paragraph. I'm going to another paragraph. This is the last paragraph of his whole opinion. So I read the first paragraph, then I read a paragraph from the middle. Now I'm reading the last paragraph from the opinion of the court delivered by Justice Alito. We end this opinion where we began. Abortion presents a profound moral question. The Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Roe and Casey arrogated that authority. We now overrule those decisions and return that authority to the people and their elected representatives. The judgment of the Fifth Circuit is reversed and the case is remanded for further proceedings consistent with this opinion. It is so ordered. Now, what did that mean? I need you to understand it. What Justice Alito is saying, of course, those who concur with him agree with this, generally speaking, is that deciding about abortion is something that state legislatures have always done prior to Roe versus Wade. And when the Supreme Court said it was made it a federal mandate that abortion was a right, a constitutional right, because whenever the Supreme Court speaks, they're speaking from the Constitution. So in Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court ruled that abortion was a constitutional right that women had. It took the rights away from the state to decide whether abortion should be legal or illegal. And they overstepped their judicial power. This is what this Supreme Court is saying. And they're undoing that and giving that power back to the states, which means each state, again, has the right not only to decide if abortion should be legal or illegal, but if they make it legal, at what point should it become illegal? Again, like, will it be up to 15 months, 15 weeks, 20 weeks or more? Each state will make a decision. He also says in this opinion that he believes this embittered discussion that we've had about abortion, like the fact that people are so angry and heated about it, is because of the decisions that the court made. If the court had never, ruled the way they ruled in Roe v. Wade and in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, Americans wouldn't debate abortion like this. Because again, it would still be back at the state level. So you would vote people in who agree with you, and you vote people out that didn't agree with you, but it wouldn't be us head to head with each other, political party against political party. This is his assertion in the opinion of the court. And he's trying to undo it. Now, the reality is that's already done. I don't see this court decision undoing that because it's already been done. But he's asserting that the court's original decision 49 years ago, Roe versus Wade, is the reason we have this terrible debate and people being at each other concerning this issue, because we're fighting each other on a national level when it should be just a state decision. And then there would be no reason for us to fight on a national level. And of course, again, he says that the Constitution doesn't in any way address abortion, prohibiting it or regulating it, not at all. And so the right to address it goes back to the states and the people who elect their representatives in those states. Basically what he's saying. Now, what we need to know, there's a lot that we need to know about this politically, because what that means then is some states like Mississippi already had laws in place. When that ruling happened Friday, that now it's no longer a constitutional right, so it's not a federally protected constitutional right, the power goes back to the states. So now the state laws, like the one that came before the Supreme Court, where Mississippi had said no abortions past 15 weeks gestation, those laws now all go into effect. They were already there. They already existed. Those laws they go into effect now with some power behind them without the potential to be overruled by the Supreme Court. Additionally, states will make new laws. And that's something we need to understand. States will absolutely make new laws. And those laws will often be dependent upon the political party that's in power, especially since two political parties right now that lead in this discussion are going to be Republicans and Democrats, who are diametrically opposed on this issue. Like, there's no coming together, there's no middle ground, there's no meeting, there's no conversation, nothing when it comes to abortion. This is probably the most divisive political issue that we have. Like, this is the one where there's absolutely no conversation, there's no agreement, there's no meeting each other in the middle. The two main political parties are completely divided on this issue. And it's a lot like Justice Alito said, it's because of the moral challenges and the very personal beliefs that are attached to it. And so you're going to see that polarization. Now, we have on our Invitation Movement website, which is invitationmvmt.org, there's a lot of information there for you and some things that I want you to check out. And so we've actually got a new page that addresses bloodshed in our land. And that page was created after three different mass shootings that happen across the United States. Of course, Buffalo, Uvalde, and then in California, the shooting at the church. And so after that page on bloodshed, the Lord had me create that page because it's something we've been addressing as a ministry for years. And we're certainly not the only ministry, but we've been addressing innocent bloodshed on our land. When I created that page, the Lord told me you must include abortion on that page because it is innocent bloodshed. And we can't address children being murdered if we don't address that spirit that even seeks to take out the babies in the womb. And so on that page, you're actually going to find, I'm actually going to take you to our website. So I want to show you something as we're talking about the political realm. This is our site, invitationmvmt.org. If you scroll down, you're going to see lots of different things there, what we believe in and what we do. But then you're going to go to, here it is, the Invitation Movement working throughout the United States. And both of these right here, the word of the Lord for the USA, from 2021 to millennial reign, we're going to look at that in a moment. The Declaration of Kingdom Standards for the United States of America, we got to look at that when we look at that word of the Lord. And then this is the bloodshed page. And so when you click this page, actually, you don't have to click it. If you scroll down, you're going to see addressing abortion post Roe. That's actually on the bloodshed page. But if you click it, it's going to take you right to that section that's right on abortion. And so I want to encourage you to do that. You can either click the picture of the models, the fetal models, and that's actually going to show you babies at different stages of development. But right here at 12 weeks, the fetus is completely developed, like all the body parts, the fingers, the limbs, everything is fully developed at 12 weeks. It's just now continuing to grow and mature. All the internal organs are still growing, but the actual form of the fetus is developed at 12 weeks. And that's that little teeny one right there. And then each one just continues on in development. So if you click here, it takes you down that bloodshed page to the portion about abortion. And so again, we see the different fetuses, 12 weeks, that's 16 weeks, that's 22 weeks gestation, and this is 26 weeks gestation. And state laws vary on at which time fetuses can be aborted. See, this one at 12 weeks, anyone who allows abortion of a 12-week-old. That one right there, that's formed but little, the state law would say yes, absolutely. Any state law that allows abortion is going to allow that fetus to be aborted. This one, 16 weeks, most state laws, if there is a state law saying that abortion is legal, most state laws would say 16 weeks is legal. Some stop at 15 weeks, like you saw in the Mississippi law, stopping at 15 weeks, which is going to be 1 week before this stage here. Most state laws would not allow abortion at 22 weeks or 26 weeks, but some do. 26 weeks is going to be just under 6 months. It's actually 5.5 months. And what's important to note about this is that with the decision going back to the states, laws will vary tremendously. I mean, they will vary across the board. And this is why some people are very up in arms and very concerned, because the laws will now be very different in different places. And some, of course, will ban it. Some states will ban and have already banned abortion. And so you'll see here, this is a little map that shows states that already have bans in place. And that's going to be in that dark burgundy. And then you're going to see some that will most likely ban it like a month after this ruling. And that's going to be that lighter red color. Then you got like an orange color, meaning they're likely to ban it at some point. And then the places that are in the lavender, it's legal and it's likely to be protected, meaning abortion is likely to be protected. And probably they will allow long-term abortions, which is very interesting because you're going to see New England, you're going to see West Coast, where you're seeing most of the long-term abortions and the protection of abortion rights actually happening. You're going to see a lot of New England. You see up and down the West Coast is where you see that mostly. And then, of course, those gray ones are uncertain. We're not sure what's going to happen in those states. And Virginia is one of those gray states. And the reason Virginia is a gray state is because decisions in Virginia are really decided about who's in power. Virginia is not necessarily a red or a blue state. It depends on which way the pendulum swings based on the issues that are important to us as citizens. So Virginia goes back and forth. Virginia is not one of those states that stays staunchly conservative or staunchly liberal, even though we tend to be more of a conservative state. We're not completely, being also a military area and all of that. So Virginia, it's possible that Virginia will go back and forth, depending on who is in power at a particular time. That's actually very possible. And it's important that we understand that, because politically speaking, now this issue has the potential to go up and down, back and forth, and change in various different ways, depending on what's going on in a state at a time. So now I want to stop sharing that screen. And I also want to share with you, as we're looking at the political environment, you're going to see also for political parties that abortion, it has been a big deal. It's going to be the most important deal now. And it's going to polarize us all the more, where people are going to have to decide if you're on either of the poles, completely opposed to abortion in all cases, or completely for abortion in all cases. It's going to polarize. The issue is going to polarize us, so that people have to choose. All those middle grounders that Justice Alito was talking about, which is a lot of Americans, are going to have to then decide which camp they're going to go into. And so you got to remember this, like all of this is happening in the political scene, and it's happening quickly. As we see, new people being elected in, elections, state elections coming in, local elections coming in, abortion is going to be a big deal now. This is why. And candidates are going to be running off of it to try to get those who believe as they believe. And the parties are going to pressure them to be either on this side or on that side, and not have any of the middle road opinions or laws. There's going to be a lot more of a polarization happening, and not completely, but it's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of the polarizing. And remember that, because now we're about to talk about the spiritual side. We're going to talk about the spiritual side, what God has said about this, what God is saying now, what he said in the scriptures. Like, we got to look at these things so that we get an understanding of where we are on this issue with the Lord, and where we are as a nation. Because I actually want to let's start historically with what God has said historically concerning abortion. Now, this is important because the word abortion and the concept of abortion is not in the Bible. So you're not going to see where in the Bible the Lord says have an abortion, or you have the right to have an abortion, or you do not have the right to have an abortion, because that's not going to be the language that was that was used in biblical times. But there are a few things that you're going to see in the scriptures. And I actually want to share my screen again, because in 2020, as we were coming into the elections, we held a delegation or a deliberation of the National Kingdom Council. And out of that, the Lord created the Declaration of Kingdom Standards for the United States of America. And that's because he said, as we were praying, Lord, turn our hearts back to you as a nation. The Lord said, my people don't know how to turn back to me. And what he meant was, we don't understand his standards and why he has the standards that he has. People have either done away with the Lord in the Bible, or they believe, but they don't know why they believe what they believe. And again, that's a huge polarization. And so the Lord said, I want you to understand my standards for this nation, and I want you to understand why these standards are important for this nation now and for the future. And so he gave us a Declaration of Kingdom Standards for the United States of America out of a group of us who came together from different denominations, both genders, different backgrounds, various age groups, different ethnicities. Like, we were a very diverse group. And we've signed it at the end, so you know who was actually involved. And you'll see that in this declaration, the Lord addresses women's rights and abortion. It was a very important issue. So I'm actually going to share my screen again. And so you'll see it right here, Declaration of Kingdom Standards for the United States of America. This is at invitationmvmt.org. If you click this, or if you click find out more, either one of them, it's going to take you to the National Kingdom Council page. And on that page, the Declaration of Kingdom Standards for the United States of America is actually in a video form, where I actually read it aloud. It's a very long document. And there's the PDF. The PDF is right there on the page. It's 36 pages long, but you can actually look at this PDF. You can download this PDF. You can click through it. Like, if I click this button says next, it'll take me to the next page. There's scriptural references. There's all these different resources. There's historical connections to what the Lord has said in the United States and what he's done in the nation. And there's all types of stuff being addressed in this document, because we've got to understand what the Lord says. And so you see that second issue, which was very important. Like, we started with the founding documents of the United States of America. That was the first thing we talked about, issue number one. But issue number two was women's rights and abortion. It's that important to God. Not just abortion, women's rights and abortion. The Lord cares about everybody. He cares about women, pregnant, destitute, concerned, raped, molested. He cares about the unborn. He cares about everybody. He cares about the men who want to be involved, who don't want to be involved. He cares about everybody. And it actually is addressed in that section, women's rights and abortion, and it flows right into the next section on family values and gay rights. And I want to encourage you, read that, because again, the Lord cares about everybody. As individuals, again, we tend to allow ourselves to be polarized. We care about specific groups. We care about people that are like us. We care about people who believe the way we believe, but that is not how the Lord is. He made all of us. He cares about everybody. And so I want to encourage you to actually go to the Declaration of Kingdom Standards for the United States of America and read what the Lord says about women's rights and abortion. And so it starts here on page 5. And you're going to see that we talk about what the Lord says about forming the human and how we're made in his image in the book of Genesis and verses in chapter 1, verses 27 through 28, and how precious life is to him. And there's lots of other scriptures here that really help you understand what the Lord says about women, cherishing and valuing women, protecting women, supporting women, and then also life, supporting life, the unborn, and how he feels about the unborn. Now, I want to give you a scripture because I can't read all of this in your hearing today, like I read from the excerpts from the opinion of the court, but I do want to share some things with you that are in that declaration. I want to share a scripture with you. I want to share this scripture, which is actually quoted in the Declaration of Kingdom Standards for the United States of America, and it comes out of Exodus chapter 21. And this is a scripture that we apply to understand God's view about the unborn. And this is how it reads. So the Exodus chapter 21, I'm reading verses 22 through 25 in the New International Version. And this is how it reads. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there's no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Now, you know, of course, babies don't even have teeth yet. So the Lord is actually speaking of the fact that this fetus in the womb has been injured. A person has caused the injury. And as that baby is born and continues to grow, and we see what injury has occurred to that baby based off of the injury from this person, that person is to receive in him or herself the very same woundedness that they caused in this unborn human being, or this potential for life, depending on how you look at it. The Lord protects the unborn in the same way that he protects those who are already born, because he uses the same law, the same wording, even tooth for tooth. Like I told you, babies don't even have teeth yet. So you got to watch a baby to make sure that they're going to grow teeth, to make sure that their gums haven't been damaged and things like that by this injury. And if they've been injured, the person who injured them has to receive the exact same injury. In that way, what the Lord tells us is that to him, the unborn are just as important as the born. We don't tend to see it that way. But the Lord, this is what he's saying right here in Exodus chapter 21, verses 22 through 25, which takes us right back to the Supreme Court opinion, because now you're dealing with the rights of a woman and the rights of autonomy of a woman and the rights of privacy, because that was also stated. Those are the two rights of autonomy and the rights of privacy of a woman, and the rights of existence of the unborn, which the Lord says the unborn do have the right to exist. Now, this is key, because in this, it also says that the court and the husband shall fine the person who has injured this pregnant woman and her unborn baby, which speaks of a woman being defended, protected, and deemed precious. So not only is her own husband or the man in her life standing up for her, but the entire court system is supposed to support her because she has now been injured. So the entire system itself is set up to protect her. Now this, when we speak in biblical times, when the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible were written, this was revolutionary. that a woman should be protected and that the courts should protect her rights and her unborn baby's rights. It was revolutionary thinking, because women, of course, were not valued. And then the unborn, of course, weren't even valued that much. But the Lord is saying, no, I value both the woman and I value the unborn. And this is why in the Declaration of Kingdom Standards, the Lord had us look at women's rights and abortion, not just abortion. And this is very important. And we recognize this because as we look at the political landscape in America, we see people caring about either or. We see people caring about women's rights or the rights of the unborn. And God does not fit into either of those categories. He cares about both, which causes us to have to make some very tough moral decisions. It causes us to have to make some very hard decisions. And these are not decisions that the Lord wants us to make independent of him. These are decisions he wants us to make in prayer and relationship to him. And this is key. Let me tell you why. Because even politically speaking, when we talk and we say, God is pro-life, and there are others who even say God is pro-choice. The reality is he's pro-choice and urges us to choose life. This is the truth of God, is that he gives us a choice. And with that choice, he urges us to choose life. So he is not going to be at that place where we have all pushed ourselves into those corners where we're hollering at each other and pointing fingers at each other. The Lord gives us a choice and urges us to choose life with that choice. Now, let's look at a scripture that's going to tell you that. It's actually going to say that very thing. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19, this is how it reads in the NIV. Again, it's Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live. What does that mean? It means that from the very beginning, God has given all of us the right to choose. There absolutely is a right of autonomy that our Creator has given us. And the Constitution actually talks about these rights endowed by our Creator. It actually speaks of that. The Declaration of Independence talks about it, and so does the Constitution. And a right of autonomy is endowed by our Creator. He gave us the right to choose. He started at the very beginning in Genesis chapter 2, and he put the tree of life there, and then he also put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That tree did not have to be in the garden. He put it in the garden because if it wasn't in the garden, we would not have a choice. He did not want us to partake of it, but if he didn't put it there, we would have been mindless drones, robots, servants, slaves. He didn't want slaves and servants and robots. He wanted children who had opportunity to choose for themselves. By putting the tree, that with it housed, it embodied the knowledge of good and evil. And biblical knowledge is not head knowledge, not just information. To know something, biblically speaking, is to have intimate relationship with it. He did not want us to have intimate relationship with evil, but he did not take our choice away to not have intimate relationship with evil. But he told us, if you have intimate relationship with evil, you're going to die. Like he let us know that's the result of that. If you partake of that tree, you're going to die. The result, if you have an intimate fellowship with evil, is that it's going to kill you. You're going to die. You're going to open up the doorway for death to come upon you. But I'm not taking your choice away. This is God's heart on this very issue. He does not take our choice away, but he tells us, please, please, please choose life. Because if you don't, you're opening the door for death to come upon you. Now, this is going to explain why we have abortion on the bloodshed page of the Invitation Movement's website. Because as we choose abortion, as individuals, as a nation, as we choose abortion, what we do spiritually is we open the door for death to come upon us, and not just in the form of abortions, but in other forms as well. That the assignment of the enemy, these schemes of the enemy to still kill and destroy. That's what John chapter 10 tells us. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. For him to want to do that, to want to kill us, to want to destroy us, we have dominion on earth. God gave us dominion on the earth. We have to welcome the enemy to do it. And when we do certain things, when we kill and have no regard for murdering innocent lives, we tell the enemy, murder is welcome. Death is welcome. And we've done that. And it's important that we recognize this as a nation, because most people argue that Roe versus Wade gave women right to have an abortion. But what I want to share with you is that it did more than that, because women already in certain states already had the right to have an abortion because it was a state decision. When it became a federal law, our nation entered into a national covenant with the spirit of death, and particularly murder. We literally opened the gates of our nation and said for murder to come in when Roe versus Wade was ruled. I'm talking about in the spiritual realm. This is what happened in the spiritual realm. This is why what was birthed out of it was not just a freedom movement for women to make choices and to be autonomous, but an entire industry. The abortion industry was birthed out of it, which I call the abortion machine. And that industry, just like everything else in America, is all about making money. But it makes money at the cost of life, and not just the lives of fetuses. Women then become targets, not just minority women, though you will note that abortion clinics are proportionately higher. The number of abortion clinics are proportionally higher in Black and brown communities. So minorities are particularly targeted through a racist agenda by abortion. And you will find this, just look it up. There's so many different words you can look up, but one I will give you is Ma'afa, M-A-A-F-A, which means the terrible occurrence, Ma'afa. It speaks of the Middle Passage of African Americans, but the contemporary Ma'afa is the abortion agenda to destroy Black babies and then also brown babies, so minority babies. And you will learn, if again, you can look these things up, look them up on YouTube, look them up on Google. There have been tapped conversations where people actually called abortion clinics and said, if I support your abortion clinic, can you guarantee me that a certain number of Black babies will be aborted? And they have said, yes, absolutely, we can. Meaning there's an agenda to ensure that a certain number of particularly Black and brown babies are aborted. But it's not just Black and brown babies. Young women in general, and women who are afraid, women who are destitute, women who are confused, are targeted at abortion clinics. And this is important that we understand it, because Roe versus Wade birthed an industry. It birthed a machine, a killing machine, which is why there have been 63 million plus babies aborted since 1973. It is ridiculously disproportionate with the numbers prior to 1973. Like nothing even like that was happening, not on that scale, before 1973. Now, the numbers, of course, we already know there's a disparity in those numbers prior to 1973, because a lot of women were having the back alley abortions and they were hiding it. And so you don't have accurate numbers for 1973. So it's hard to really compare, but we know it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. And we see the numbers, the abortion numbers, they skyrocket. Like they don't go up at a steady rate. They go up at an exponential rate because of the spiritual ramifications, meaning the door's been opened up to murder and death, but also because now there is an industry that is targeting young people. This is key that we understand it, because what we did, or what the Supreme Court justices just did in overruling Roe versus Wade, was to close that national gate to murder and death, which is important. We need that gate closed. Break that national covenant with death, which is important. We need that national covenant broken. And they then struck a blow against the industry itself, the abortion industry itself. And as a mother, as a grandmother, that is important to me, because I know young women are targeted by the industry. It's one thing for a young woman to have information, to be informed, to be led to resources, all of her different options laid out, given time to think about it and confer with friends and family if she chooses to, and then make her sound decision. But this is not what happens in the abortion industry. It's not what happens. And when we get personal in a minute, I'm gonna tell you a story, because it's not what happens. That's not what happens. And that's important. It's important that a blow is struck to that industry because it's completely demonic. It's completely demonic. It's important that we get that. It's not just medical procedures happening. There's a demonic force behind it that is targeting our women. And that's not what's supposed to happen. People are saying, oh, women should have rights and want to protect women's rights. Women went from having rights to being targeted. That's not what we want. None of us want that. None of us want that. We can agree we don't want women to be targeted. We can agree on that. And that actually, it's being addressed more so now. It's the door for it to be addressed now has been opened, and that's good because it hadn't been addressed. So now let's look at what the Lord has already said to us. Remember, I told you we're still in the spiritual, and we're going to get personal in a minute. In the spiritual side, the Lord has actually already spoken to us. Remember that word I shared with you? I'm going to actually take you back to the Invitation Movement's website. There it is. And I want to show you where it is. And then I'm actually read from it. I'm just going to read a few little excerpts because the Lord has already spoken to us about this. Again, this is invitationmvmt.org. And there it is. It's the first one here under the Invitation Movement throughout the USA and Israel. And it says, word for the USA in 2021 and beyond. The word of the Lord for the USA from 2021 to millennial reign. You can click here or you can click there. Either way, it's going to take you right to that word from the Lord. And there it is. Boom. Again, you can actually watch a video where I read it aloud, or you can download the PDF. Actually, I just skipped it. Right there, you can download this PDF or you can read the PDF aloud. Now, I actually recorded it December 31st, 2020, but the Lord was speaking to me from October to that time. And he had me to record it on December 31st, 2020 and release it December 31st, 2020. And it's 9 pages long. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of it in your hearing because, again, we are in a lot of places where we don't understand what God is doing. God has done something. We don't understand what he's done. And how does that even work? Now, this is important that we understand this about God. God is sovereign, meaning like the federal government in the United States is sovereign, but the states have autonomy to make decisions. That's how our relationship is with God. He is sovereign, overarching. The universe belongs to him. He created everything, but he has given us freedom of choice and he's given us authority in the earth realm as it connects to his sovereignty, which means there are times when he makes sovereign decisions and those sovereign decisions are connected to the individual choices that we are making to guide us in human history. But for the most part, we're making all the choices ourselves. But there's certain things that he influences because he knows what he has to do in our lives in order to be gracious to us, not to harm us, but to do good to us. There's certain ways he has to guide us, certain things he has to guide so that we can actually receive the good he wants us to receive. At least we'll have an opportunity to receive the good. We can reject it, but he wants us to at least have the opportunity to receive the good that he has planned for us. And in this nation, the good that he has planned for us is that he actually gave a vision to our founding fathers for this nation. They weren't perfect in enacting it. You better believe that. It took a long time before we even got to the place where we could really see America being what God envisioned it being. And even now, we fall ridiculously short. But he has a plan for this nation that we would be a beacon of light and of hope and of freedom to people all over the world. We've done that to a certain extent, and to a certain extent we have not, because we often don't understand what that freedom is supposed to look like. Even in this issue, this is the very thing we're talking about: a woman's autonomy, a fetus's right to exist. Where does this freedom end and this freedom begin? And it becomes something that we have a hard time navigating, especially apart from him. So he has to interject and guide us, but the decisions at the end of the day are ours. He leads us, he speaks to us, he puts some things in place, and then he allows us to choose. And then he, of course, has to act in accordance with his will as we make these choices. And so we got to understand that about God, that our lives are going to be mostly a result of us, partly a result of him guiding us to try to give us some grace. We can keep walking away from that grace if we want to. That's our choice, because he will never take our choice away. He'll never take it back. He's given us free will and he won't take it back. And so we need to understand that as we're reading this word from the Lord. And so I want to actually read the first 3 paragraphs of this word from the Lord to his people in the United States of America, as he gave it to me, Marquita Brooks, on 16 Tevet 5781, also known as December 31st, 2020. That's in the Hebrew calendar and, of course, in the Gregorian calendar. And we hear these 3 paragraphs, and I have 2 more that I want to read to you that are on the other pages, because we got to understand what he already said and how that's playing out right now. Hear the word of the Lord. You've seen my great holiness and power manifested in your nation throughout the years, in provision, in protection, in leaders, in movements. Yet whenever you see my power manifested, you begin to lift up the vessels I have used as if they are the source of power rather than looking to me. I can empower and raise up whomever or whatever I choose. I raised up President Trump in this nation so that my will could be done in many ways, but he is not the source of your power, nor is he the source of your problems. Consider the matter. At what point did you stop looking to me and begin looking to him? Whether he was your source of security or your object of scorn, he has become an idol in your eyes that I have to remove. Throughout the history of this nation, I've used many people and institutions to enact my will, and all of them did so imperfectly. This is part of my perfect will, so that your eyes would stay focused on me and your heart drawn to my perfect and unchangeable standards. That is where you will find your security, and that is the measure you must use to judge the actions of your leaders. All of you must repent in this matter. I will share my glory with no one, and my standards do not change regardless of who is applying them. Refocus your attention on me, for there is nothing and no one else who can sustain you in days to come. As the creator of the universe, as the creator of all things, is what it says, I am the only one with the wisdom necessary to govern the universe. Stop fighting me and my plans. I raise one up, I take one down. I elevate, I humble. In all things, I move in accordance with my will, but I do respond to your faith as you seek me. Faith from you must first be a response to me. You add faith to my revealed will. As you believe me to do exactly what I have promised, you and I walk in agreement on earth and in the heavenly realms, hastening the manifestation of my will on earth. However, when you presume to know my will or listen to those who have done so, to believe for it to manifest is not faith. It is, in fact, presumption. I have no obligation within my own standards to fulfill what you presume to be my will. Seek me fervently to discern my will. Add your faith to that. Then you will see my kingdom come, my will done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, I want to read 2 more paragraphs to you, and then we're going to talk about what does that mean for us and why did God say that. Here is another paragraph. This is on page 4, is the first full paragraph on page 4. I'm going to read that paragraph and the one following it, and then I'm going to read something from page 7. Listen to this. I am birthing revival, yet to revive that which comes from me, I must destroy that which opposes me. The plans of man must come down. The strongholds of Satan must come down. Everything attached to that which opposes my kingdom must be removed to make room for that which my son will build. There will be unrest, some of which I will allow to destroy abominations in my sight. This is the beginning of tribulation. However, the enemy will also use unrest as an opportunity to destroy life and incite chaos. Yet you remain alert. Have your wits about you at all times. Look for the openings that the enemy will use to attempt to topple the entire government. That is not my doing. My judgment will certainly bring low that which opposes me, but I will establish order and maintain justice as I work. Everything that opposes such is from the enemy and an attempt to establish his demonic kingdom on earth. You must oppose it. There will be groups and individuals that claim to have the good of the nation at heart, but their motivations are destructive. I established the foundation of this nation. Anything that would attempt to remove the foundation is an attempt to destroy the nation, and you must perceive it as such. In all ways, distinguish yourselves from them and walk in peace with all humanity. Make sure your ways please me, and I will not only direct your paths, but I will also cause the enemy to surrender to you. Stay in the place I have ordained for you and commit to my ways. Your love and inner peace in these times will bring glory to me and souls to my kingdom. Now I want to read a portion from page 7, and this is the last part that I want to read to you, but I want to make sure that you hear this part, because if you don't hear it, you won't understand what I'm talking about with regard to the future of America. This is what it says. This is going to be on page 7. This is the second full paragraph. In the time of tribulation, you will receive revelation from me for various cities, regions, and states. Each area will have its own instructions, as each area has its own battles to fight. Some regions will turn to me before others, and some regions will not turn to me at all. Watch for my moves in this nation, because I may call you to move in the nation to the place of my protection. Not every locality will remain. As my people, you decide where I am welcome and where I am opposed. The locations that welcome me will do so by repentance and experience revival. Those that refuse to repent will experience the consequences of their own behavior, currently and historically. This will cause many to turn to me and others to fall away, though I am not seeking to attract the greatest number of people, but instead to do the greatest good for all people. Now, I hope you really, really heard those paragraphs. When we look at those few, and I couldn't read all 9 pages to you right now, but you can read it all. You can watch the video where I read it aloud. You can download it. You can read it right on the website. What you hear, and this is December 31st, 2020, after the election results, before the January 1st insurrection. What you hear is God saying, don't make your leaders an idol. Whether you hate Trump, whether you love him, I'm removing him because he's becoming an idol. Y'all are focusing too much on him. There are things I wanted him to do. Now I want to remove him, and you got to agree with me and not presume to understand my will. There were those in the kingdom who knew God wanted to address abortion. And because Trump was pro-life, they assumed that God was going to keep him in office. They didn't know what was coming. We didn't know January 6th was coming. But the Lord told us in that word that anyone who tries to go against the government, who tries to topple the government, who tries to cause unrest and chaos and disorder, that's not for me. The enemy is using them. Can God use somebody and then the enemy use that same person? Yes, because we have free will. It can happen to any of us. Peter said, thou art the Christ. And then 2 minutes later, the Lord had to rebuke him and say, get behind me, Satan. Why? Because we're human and we're flawed, all of us, which is why our eyes need to be on him and not on each other. What we see happening in the Supreme Court, many of those justices were appointed by President Trump. I believe 4 of the 5 were. Did God want that to happen? Yes. Why? Because he said in the word that I just read, the excerpts I read, he had to address strongholds in this nation. Federally sanctioned abortion was a stronghold of murder. He had to address it nationally. Why? Because he said he's going to look at us region by region. He said it in the word. Some regions are going to draw closer to him. Some regions are going to draw further away. And wherever he's welcome, there'll be revival. Wherever he's not welcome, there'll be judgment. He needed a line of distinction. And that's not just so he can just freely judge, it's so that people can see the difference. He needs people to see the difference in regions and areas that are trying to serve him and regions and areas that are not, that are deliberately going as far away from the will of God as possible. Now, this is what we've got to understand. His will is not as always as clear as we think it is. Many believers think, oh, well, if we stand against abortion, we're in the will of God. But remember, at the very beginning, I shared with you, God cares about the woman and the fetus. He cares about the man. He cares about the family. He cares about the whole society. He's not choosing one over the other. And whenever believers do that, we misrepresent him. And this is important for us to note. In post-Roe America, the body of believers has got to step up. There are lots of women who are not going to be traveling across state lines to have abortion, and they're not going to be looking up the abortion laws, and they're going to be having babies that they didn't plan to have, and maybe were unwanted babies. And the body of believers is going to have to step up with love and resources. This is not just a testing for people who are pro-choice. This is a testing for people who are pro-life. What will you do now that your prayers were answered? What will you do now that there are more women who need resources? Because this is the reality. There is no place in this nation where a woman is less heard than in the church. I hope you understood that. There is no place in this nation where a woman is less heard than in the church. God is testing all of us right now. And the test is important because what it does, test, if you think about like boot camp and like exams and stuff like that, what it does is it pulls out of us what's in us. The prayer is that we will see that we are good, not just the church, not just, Israel, not just, but all of us as a nation, that we will see that goodness is within us, that we will rise to the occasion. Stop fighting each other. Stop pointing fingers at each other. but look for solutions to problems that raped women have and abused women have, and women without resources, and women in challenging situations, and women who are promiscuous and don't realize that they're really destroying their own souls. Like, we've got all of these different types of people, men who are just sleeping around and planting seeds and not taking any responsibility whatsoever. We've got all of these people now who have needs that are going to become much more surface. They're going to show up. They're going to be more prevalent to us than they had been before. You can just go get an abortion, remove all evidence of what happened. It changes everything. But when it's harder to do, now we got to deal with some real issues. We got to deal with premarital sex. We got to deal with sex among young kids. We got to deal with abuse and incest and rape and molestation, even in the body of believers. We got to deal with promiscuity. We got to deal with prostitution. We got to deal with that stuff. We have to actually deal with it. Lack of communication between parents of a fetus, the family's involvement, dysfunctional families, resources, education. We have some things to deal with. We've got work ahead of us. Revival does not come without sacrifice. The Lord said in those areas that follow him, there will be revival. What does that mean? Doesn't mean that we go, woohoo, Roe has been overruled. No, we say, Lord, what would you have us do? How do you have need of us? And I want to tell you, there are some resources on our site. That same site, invitationmvmt.org. I want to take you back there because you need to see that these resources are available. Because again, we're not just talking about an issue and saying, woohoo, this happened or that happened, because the reality is we've got to step up and there's some work we've got to do. So let us look here. We're back at the site. Go down again to addressing abortion post-Roe. You can click on the fetal models, or you can click on find out more. And it's going to take you to the abortion section on our bloodshed page. And you're going to see that there are two websites here. The first one is marchforlife.org, post-Roe. And I put this one first because there's a plethora of resources here. So, of course, there's a sign-up sheet here where you can join the email list. I would suggest you do that, especially if you are pro-life. Even if you're not, they've got a lot of resources. They help you understand, things that are different things that are happening. They give you some education. And so it's good to just know more information than just what's been presented by one side. You always want to have a clear view of some things. And so this is talking to you about laws being changed, what's going to happen in different states. That's important. But this part is the part that blesses me the most. Resources for women and their families. Resources for women who are pregnant or parenting. Pregnancy centers. Support lines. Support for after abortion. Counseling after abortion. Grieving the loss of a child or abortion. We've got a lot to address. And I love this site, this page that marchforlife.org put up, post-Roe-America. Very important topic, but I bless God that it's actually here because this is a resource for us. So now let's go back to the page. And here's another one. This is it says dlinstitute.org/Jeremiah. This is going to be the Douglas Leadership Institute. Of course, we had Apostle Arnold Colbreth, who was with us on Sunday during our healing service, and he addressed this very issue. And so when you go to this site, this is actually a place where ministries can get involved and stop talking from the sidelines, stop standing on your soapbox, and realize that there's real needs and real help that can be provided and should be provided by God's people, not with the whole moral attitudes and the mightier, the holier than thou, but actually being able to make a difference in the lives of individuals and all of these babies that will come forth who possibly wouldn't even have been born if Roe v. Wade hadn't been overruled. And so I want to encourage you, especially if you are a ministry leader, to sign up to connect with the Jeremiah 1:5 project, where the Lord says in Jeremiah 1:5, before you were born, I knew you and appointed you. Before I knew you, before you were formed in your mother's womb, before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as my prophet to the nations. Like, it's so important that we know God knows us in the womb, and even these embryos, he knows them in the womb as well. And so I want to encourage you to connect, to join, to sign up, to hear stories, and to allow God to use you, because we've got to do something different because the times have changed. If we want revival, we got to step up and we got to represent God well. Soapboxes, Bible beating never helped anybody. The body of believers has to change, because like I said, there is no place in the United States where a woman's voice is less heard than in the body of believers. We have to do something about that. And this is why other people do not trust what's coming forth from God's spokesman, because there isn't a heart to care for the women, the men, the families involved, the situations that they're in. There is this pretending like those of us in the body have never been in these types of situations, that we've never had these experiences in our past, when absolutely we have. There's this coldness of the heart toward people who are in challenging situations and don't know what to do, and need assistance, need guidance, need prayer, need support. And we've got to repent of that. And so I told you lastly, we were going to talk about the personal. And so there's two things I want to share with you personally from my perspective. And then I want to encourage you to look up testimonies of others, like on the Jeremiah Project page on the dlinstitute.org/Jeremiah. There is a testimony there. Read testimonies, because you've got to see this as personal. That's how God sees it. God doesn't see it as legislation. God doesn't see it as a Supreme Court case. He sees it as very personal. He sees it every single woman, every single man, every single fetus. And he cares about each one and their circumstances, every single one. He doesn't change his standards, but he cares, and he has creative solutions for everybody involved should we turn to him. Now, two things that I want to share with you. Remember, I told you we're going to look at the personal. Remember when I shared with you that the abortion industry was birthed out of Roe v. Wade. This is my testimony with the abortion industry. I've never had an abortion, but I remember when I got pregnant with my first child. I was living with my fiance at the time, and I was in my final year of college. We had sent out wedding invitations and everything, and I found out that I was pregnant. And so I went to Planned Parenthood because I was in Richmond, which is where I am now. So I went to school in Richmond, Virginia. And, but my family was in, Hampton, Virginia Beach, Norfolk. And so I was, over an hour away from everybody close to me. And so I went there for resources. Like I told you, we was about to get married, everything. We hadn't planned to have a child, but we were excited about it. I went to get resources, and I filled out the little form, and the lady asked me, as I'm filling out the form, to get a pregnancy test, because we believed that I was pregnant. I wanted a test, and I wanted resources after the test. She said to me, do you want to have this baby or a baby? Do you want to be pregnant? And I said, why would you ask me that? I want a test. Like, what is that? Why would you even ask me that? And she said, it can affect the outcome of the test. Now, I have always been intelligent, and I paid attention to health class. That's how I knew to go to Planned Parenthood, because she told us in high school in health class that they have resources for pregnant women. So that's why I went there. But I paid attention to all those classes. I knew a desire to be pregnant or not be pregnant does not change the outcome of a pregnancy test. It's a hormone that determines whether that pregnancy test is positive or negative, and your desire will not affect that hormone. So I said, she said, yes, it can affect the outcome of the test. So do you want to be pregnant or not? What kind of question is that? So I put yes, that I did want to be pregnant. Like I told you, we hadn't planned for it, but we were excited if I was. She came back to me and said that I wasn't pregnant. And I'm telling you, I knew she was lying. I knew she was lying. On my way home, I bought a pregnancy test, took it, and it was positive. Immediately it was positive. Like it wasn't no few minutes, it was positive immediately, which means I had a lot of the pregnancy hormone in my system. And then I called my family, blah, 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 blah. But she had told me I wasn't. Years later, after I've spent some time really looking at this abortion industry, and in that pregnancy, I'm telling you, it became a hard pregnancy. It started out fine. I almost died. My daughter almost died. Like, it was terrible. We fought for our lives. She was born at 20. She was born at 28 weeks gestation, 2 pounds 0 ounces, and our lives were on the line for months. Like, literally, we both almost died. So years later, I'm spending all this time looking into this industry from a spiritual side, from a natural side. I'm really doing some research for lots of reasons. As I get into this in the spiritual realm, I start to understand the things I've been sharing with you today about the fact that Roe v. Wade opened the door for a spirit of death in our nation. And it birthed the abortion industry, which has an agenda, not resources, not just resources, but an agenda, goals, numbers goals. And even that industry connects with other industries, selling those aborted embryos to other industries for other purposes. Like, it's a big deal. It's big business in this nation. It's big business. I realized that in filling out those forms at Planned Parenthood, I had released my name and knowledge of this baby I was carrying, because she knew that I was pregnant. Even though she told me I wasn't, she knew I was. And it had been filed that I was a Black woman, pregnant, not yet married, because I wasn't, and carrying a baby. And it released things in the spiritual realm, which actually still came after us to kill both of us. Still, death still came after us. After I left, after I said I wanted to keep the baby, the doorway was open to death. And I never understood that until after I began to pray into this industry, because it's more than just, it's bigger than what we think it is, you guys. You got to understand that. Like, y'all know me, I'm a seer, and I'm a prophet, I'm an apostle. This is I deal in the spiritual realm. It's so much bigger than we think it is. And so we praise God that the Lord shut that door nationally, but that does not address everything. Even the state laws doesn't address, it's not about laws. This is about human hearts. This is about human lives. This is about human decisions. This is about support and being alone and being cared for. This is about God's protection and the enemy's plan to destroy. There's so much surrounding this. It's so much more involved than we think it is. The beauty of this, though, is that God cares about every individual person. When I was dying, my whole family was praying for me, and he heard their prayers. And when my baby was dying, I was praying for her. My whole family was praying for her, and he heard our prayers. She's the healthiest person in our family now. That was God. But the enemy meant to kill her and me. His plan was thwarted. And this is important that we understand that, because like I said, I was young and we weren't ready and But God intervened, and he keeps intervening. And so I want to encourage you to remember, this is about individual lives, souls. This is way more than legislation. Please remember that as you're praying about it, as you're getting in position to help, as you're standing on your soapbox and arguing with people, which hopefully you will stop doing now, because we got to get beyond that. And we've got to actually address the lives that are at stake. Women can die having babies and having abortions. It's a very serious thing. Babies can die from abortion, and if they don't get aborted, because there's so much involved in this procreation process. Relationships can be built up and they can be destroyed. We've got to really be in position to hear from the Lord and receive the love that he has, so that we will address this rightly. The last testimony I want to share with you is that I told you I'm a prophet, I'm a seer, I'm an apostle. And so I operate in the spirit realm. And over the course of my life, I have heard 3 babies, fetuses in the womb, call out to me. Like, I've literally heard them in the spirit realm call out to me and let me know that they knew that they were in danger. And I went to the mothers 3 times in my life. This happened 3 different occasions, 3 different women, 3 different fetuses, 3 times in my life. And I went to the mothers who hadn't told nobody they was pregnant. What does that tell me? It told me that those fetuses are humans, and that they are aware that something is going wrong. And that's important for us to know as we debate, are fetuses humans? Are they human life? Are they life? Is it life? Is it life? I know personally that it is life, because I have heard from them. There are others who have testimonies of hearing babies cry during abortions. Like they hear the screams in the spirit realm during abortion, because abortions are gruesome. They're really brutal and gruesome. And that's somebody else's testimony. I haven't heard that, but I have actually heard babies call out in the womb because they knew they were about to die and they needed help. These types of testimonies, there's so many testimonies. All of us as women, we have so many different testimonies. We need to share them. Your testimony needs to be heard. Somebody else's testimony needs to be heard, because this is not about laws and legislation. It's about people and the love of God and life coming into the world. And we have to keep it there. Stop letting it go to all these other places, because we get impersonal, we get cold, and we forget what it's really about. But when we hear from individuals, and these are going to be testimonies all over, testimonies of actually having abortions, testimonies of not having abortions, testimonies of babies that were born. I mean, there's testimonies across the board. We need to hear them, because it's a human issue of the human condition. And it does not just affect each individual human involved. It affects the future of this nation. You know, the woman who was dubbed Roe in the Roe versus Wade court case, she regrets that court case. She regrets that she was a part of opening this nation to federally sanctioned abortion, leading to the deaths of 73 million or 63 million plus babies or fetuses. And this is important, and we get that. You need to hear her testimony. We need to hear from women. All of us should agree about that. It can be about laws. It has to be about human experience and what God is revealing to us. Because when we're desperate, when we're concerned, when we're afraid, we don't always make the best choices. God is able to give us the shalom, the resources, the support we need, so that we can actually choose that which will bless us and future generations, and that we will be proud of in the future. Because see, this moment in time is fleeting, but our existence is for eternity. There's certain things he needs us to remember for ourselves and for others. And this is not to try to usurp somebody's choice, because God gave everybody free will. It's about us being able to inform and to support and to pray rightly and to allow God to have his way in each one of us and in our nation. Because if we get this wrong, it will affect millions. It already has. Now we've got a whole new course charted in front of us, and we've got a whole lot of choices to make. We need to, as God's people, be on the right side of this. And that doesn't mean being on the far right. It doesn't mean being ultra conservatives. It doesn't mean beating somebody on the head with the Bible. It means being right in the eyes of the Lord and in alignment with him, so we can represent him well, his standards, and also his care and his concern and his resources. God doesn't just care about us. He provides for us. And the way he provides for people is through other people. I pray that this has incited you to action as you have been informed and challenged. Join us as we continue on with so many things. God has put so much before us. In our Shabbat Temple service this Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, the link to join us is actually in the description. And continue to join us, because God is moving and you need to know the truth in the spirit so you can make informed decisions that will bless you and others.